The enduring legacy of those who survived the Holocaust is not their pain nor their hardships, but rather the lives they created. The message of hope they have brought to millions of people through their perseverance and their families is their ultimate triumph. Rick Solomon's father Bernard was issued Exit Visa 299 by Chiune Sugihara, a Japanese diplomat in Lithuania. Sugihara defied his government and issued visas to save the lives of thousands of Jews. His only motive? To do what was right.
From Lithuania, they somehow were able to scrape together money to go by train across all of Russia and Siberia, by boat to Kobe, Japan, from there to go on to Shanghai, and from Shanghai to India and make a way for themselves, and then to come virtually penniless to the United States. My father died when I was 1.5 years old, so in many ways it was a story I never knew.
Every year we visit my grandfather's gravestone, and I think we've been doing that since I was maybe 5. I started learning about the facts when I was younger, but as time has progressed, I think I've started to uncover the underlying meaning of everything.
That this gentleman, acting contrary to his government's orders, went ahead and signed these life-affirming visas that gave him and our entire family life. So to me, it taught the lesson and affected me and shaped me and as I matured, about how one person truly can make a difference, and that in our daily lives we have to give back.
My freshman year, we had a program at New Trier. It's called the Names Can Really Hurt Us program. It's sponsored by the ADL. It was a program where you learn to combat bullying. And through that, I've gotten really involved in the Names program. I co-facilitated this year, and I've been involved in it for 4 years. I learned that it's small acts like bullying and harassment that can lead to a genocide, and it's those small differences that a person can make that can prevent it.
My wish for the legacy of the survivors is that their poignant stories, their personalized stories, which are told in our museum, will exhort audiences, many who are coming and learning of these experiences for the first time, and see it to change their lives on a daily basis.
Being a third-generation Holocaust survivor makes me feel like I have a duty to tell others and make sure that nothing's forgotten.
My name is Beth Keyboard. My grandparents, Hinda Danziger Keyboard and Leo Keyboard, were Holocaust survivors from Shava, Lithuania. My grandmother, and actually all the women in her family and all of the women in my grandfather's family, went to a camp called Stutthof, which was a labor camp, and all of the men, including my grandfather and both families, went to the concentration camp Dachau. I don't really ever remember my grandparents sitting down and having some sort of formal talk with any of us, but I recall that it was just always woven into the stories they told and the life that we lived. Every single Friday night, we were at my grandparents' house for dinner, and not just my parents and my siblings, but my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. My grandmother always had this philosophy that you included people, so it was some of my non-Jewish friends from high school who became a part of our family, and every week someone was certainly there having dinner with us, playing the board games with us, sharing stories with us. Called my grandparents Bubby and Zadie. The table just kept getting bigger and bigger. Certainly growing up, Friday nights are a time when you're in school, that there's dances, that there's football games, that there's activities going on, maybe parties, and a lot of times we would get a little bitter or frustrated that we had to be at Bubby and Zadie's house for Shabbos dinner. But looking back on that, I think my favorite memories from childhood and from growing up are those nights. My grandmother was truly an activist, and she was able to connect what she had been through with struggles that other people were going on. In Minnesota, there was a man running for state representative who was a Holocaust denier and who was very homophobic. And my grandmother, having seen gay people persecuted in the Holocaust and in the camps, went to testify against this representative. And she went there to say, hey, not only were they persecuted, I saw it happen. And at that point in her life, she was in a wheelchair. She certainly couldn't drive by herself. Definitely there's other people who can go and protest against this man, but to her, this is a disenfranchised population. This is a population that's discriminated against. She felt that every single person has an obligation and a responsibility to speak out when they can. I don't think it's any coincidence that I am professionally, my career is in human rights. I guess when I went into it and pursued the career path and education path that I did, it wasn't, I'm doing this for my grandparents, but looking back, there's absolutely a direct connection to the work that I do now and that I'll always do. I think what my grandmother would want people to get from her story, and just for all people to believe, is that we have a responsibility not just to remember what happened, but to take action. We need to fix this world. We need to advocate for human rights, whether it's something that directly affects us or someone across the world. We all have an obligation to do something about it and to make this world a better place than when we first got here.
My mom grew up in a small town called Michalovce. It's in what is now known as Slovakia. And my father was on the other side of that border, so he was in what is now known as the Ukraine. My dad's experience was that at some point all of the Jews from his town were taken, and they were taken to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, only my father and my uncle survived. They didn't talk much about the war, as is pretty typical for survivors. We really lived for today. One of the things I remember about my dad, which I never could really understand until I got older, was anytime we were very happy and we were laughing and people were telling jokes and he would have a good hearty laugh, he would begin to cry. And I thought it was just, you know, hey, Dad's laughing so hard he's crying again. And now I look back and I think he was holding back so much of the pain that was still bottled up in him, having lost his parents and his sister, that whenever he, you know, opened up and became happy, the next emotion was sorrow. Now that I'm engaged in this work that we do in the museum, for me, getting to know the survivors that are in our foundation, in our organization, for me it's kind of my family. It's maybe part of the family I never had. What I learned from my parents was work, honesty, integrity. I never learned anything about revenge or anger. It's not just about teaching the lessons of the Holocaust and assuming all is going to be well, because there are bad people out in the world who wish to do others harm. And for me, it's about being strong enough to know when we have to stand up and be vigilant and say, no, hold on. Now you've crossed the line, and now we will have to stop you. It's starting with giving and caring, but having an eye on when you have to also defend, so that things like this never happen again to our people, but never happen again to any people anywhere in this world.